This time, we are wrapping up Tokyo ESP, and it is from Studio Xebec, and it is streaming on Funimation.com as well as Hulu.
And this was one of the 2 superhuman, Esper, mutant kind of comic book shows of the season.
And it seems to be another one of those anime series that really is like, man, I like the X-Men.
Yeah, and I'm kind of enjoying that anime lately has been wearing that a little bit more on its sleeve, just having that influence of American comics and that it's not all bad and superheroes can be cool, so.
I mean, I remember back in the day, Kenshin liberally borrowed from American comic books, and when he couldn't attend Otakon, he basically sent his wife and then, like, please go to American toy stores and bring back toys for me that are hard to get in Japan. She even mentioned that in the panel. But so it's been there for a while. But yeah, it is definitely more to the forefront, especially in this show.
This one more than anything because white girl. I cannot call her white girl for this length of this podcast.
Because also then the temptation to go, white girl!
Yeah, it's terrible. Rinka's father is totally a riff on Wolverine, just the way that he looks, not his power or anything, but like.
But his power is totally Magneto.
Yeah, and that's not the only character that feels like we've seen before. It really did it in kind of the most fun ways, I thought.
But it wasn't also just American comic books. There is the guy who owns the bar whose house they live in after their own house gets destroyed who looks like Steven Seagal. There's one guy who looks like a bald Bruce Willis.
Well, Bruce Willis is often bald now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess more than American comics, it looks American movies and like
and
American
Space
culture.
Dandy was in it as far as we could tell.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, although I haven't read that much of the manga, so I don't know. I'm wondering if that character appears in the manga and then how much of that is related. If you remember our review of the first episode, this series sort of starts in media res. It basically starts at the end, and then in the second episode goes back. So it starts off really like dire situation. Tokyo is under siege. The Diet building is hovering above the city, and the Espers are battling on both sides, and they're talking about wiping out humanity, and our main character doesn't even show up until the very last seconds of the first episode. So then we go back and kind of tell the story up until that point. How did you feel like that worked out? Did you think?
I feel like as much as people complain about when they do stuff like that, everybody complains when the first episode is boring even more. Like, they'll complain about it when they do that, but they'll continue to watch to find out how it gets there. But if your first episode is boring, people tend to check out, especially now that we get so much. I feel like people are like, well, nothing hooked me. I'm going to go and check out another program. And maybe if a lot of people recommend it, I'll come back to it.
And also, I feel like a lot of times people lob, that felt like a really introductory episode at things. Mm-hmm. So I think they did a good job with this. Also, I feel like the bigger culprits, or like it's so like American television does it so much, and I feel like anime doesn't do it that much. I don't think that they have overused it yet. To me anyway. Maybe I haven't watched like every time they do it, but it doesn't really bother me, and I thought that it worked well here. And also, it's just surprising when you don't really introduce the main character until like the very end. So I like that, but.
Also, I feel just one other thing that it prevents is the other thing that I find a lot of people complain about, tonal shift. It very clearly tells you from the beginning that there's going to be bloodshed and action, because this series starts out so comedic and low stake that it shows you that, look, we're going to be building up to that, so when it comes, don't be surprised.
I think the character that really bridges that, though, for the whole series is Ozma. Kind of a goofy guy. He's the one who's like, let's be heroes! Like, that's what we should do with these powers! And he really drags Rinka into that. And so I think that as the series goes on, that is one of the ways that I feel like he bridges that shift really well, because he's got this really difficult past. It really informs the whole season, but at the same time, he's such a kind of a lovable character. And also, he's kind of like a phantom thief for like an episode, so you know I like him, right? But going back to Rinka for a minute, I loved her. She is so fantastic. I mean, she's definitely one of my favorite women from the season, and I definitely feel like people aren't talking enough about her or this series, just because I really, like, there's a lot of women in it, and they're all in positions of power, and as, like, really main focuses. Rinka is our protagonist, and the kind of main antagonist is Minami, and they're basically the polar opposites of each other, but also there's like the love triangle, but it just, like, the way that they relate to each other and the way that all the women interact, I just think is really nice.
Well, I'd say the professor is the main antagonist, but Minami does a lot of the footwork and is really the one who battles most of the time. The professor kind of sits back and more chess masters.
Yeah, I just feel like she's the aggressor. She's the one that Rinka has to take on, and she's kind of her rival in love because they're both in love with Ozma. And I really liked how the show very simply, without drawing attention to it, without making a big deal out of it, really flips a lot of tropes around and does it just perfectly, like it's normal. Why would you even think about it? But if you really watch the show and the way that Minami and Rinka battle, the way Rinka interacts as the hero of the story, I just really liked that. I felt like it flipped a lot of the gender script.
Well, I think the classic scene that always sticks in my head is when the dad is like, don't worry, this is too dangerous. And he tries to get Rinka to stay back. And she does. I punch you in the stomach once, and knocks out her dad, which is so often the girl wants to go, but she can't go. So one of the guys punches her in the stomach and she gets knocked out. And she does that to her, huge bear of a dad, which I think is just like totally what you don't expect.
And I just felt like the show didn't draw attention to it. It made it seem like this is totally normal. Like, it's not a big deal. This is how you can write. I feel like there's been series lately, and it made me think about Witchcraft Works, where people were talking about, it flips the script on the gender thing. And I'm like, no, not really, but this is a better example, except the ending. Why the hell does that ending song with that ending animation of every episode, it ruins the entire show. And honestly, I feel like the show has a lot of broad appeal potential. I could totally see this on Cartoon Network or something, except that ending. What the hell? It's just that ending takes away everything I've just said, pretty much.
Well, if you haven't watched the show, you'll know it's just this weird naked Minami ending, which is just
super naked, running around, and it just takes away from everything I've said about how I really like that they portray the women in the series.
And it's weird because they seem to be really playing up that kind of fan service in the anime. I think you mentioned, and from what I remember reading the first chapter, when she first gains her power, she just sinks through the floor in her underwear, but she's naked in the anime. And I think that just it's weird that it's not there isn't any fan service in the manga, but they really turn it up to 11 in the anime at points.
At points. That's the thing, is that I actually think that overall it's pretty disparate. Except that ending. Oh my god. Moving on. The plot, we kind of already knew where it was going, so I didn't feel like there wasn't a ton of surprises in I guess that's a little bit about the in media res, is that sometimes it takes away from some of the tension almost, because that these people are going to get to this point.
Or that these characters are going to be on her side.
Right. So there was I think that happened a little bit, and I also think that the animation quality really dropped in the last couple of episodes. And so, we had that really great first episode that really ramped it up, and then finishing out that story in the last episode is this very terrible animated ending for that. So that was a little disappointing, I felt.
Well, I thought the story was strong. It was just, yeah, you could tell that they were running out of budget. And it wasn't like total Gundo Musashi bad, but it was definitely not the quality that they had during the first 2/3.
And I feel like just because we kind of came off of that like first episode that was really good, I felt it more because of that. But I was really actually surprised by the ending a little bit. I know that's an ongoing manga, so I was definitely expecting a open-ended, maybe they'll wrap up this bit of the story, but it'll be open-ended. And it actually had a couple of surprising things going on. And I was very pleased to see that the heroes didn't fail, but they didn't completely succeed. And instead of, I feel like a lot of anime kind of get known for killing characters or something, but instead of trying to shock value us with doing things like that, it really comes more from like the state of the world at the end of it that I was surprised by.
It kind of reminded me of 20th Century Boys, how like at the end of most of the arcs, they're like, well, we didn't win that. That's kind of how it felt. They prevented it from being the worst case scenario, but they definitely did not win.
Yeah, and that the world is changed very much at the end of the series, and that the next part of the story is going to take place in a world that is very different from the one that they were, used to. So, and I liked that because I was kind of like, oh, that's surprising.
Although it is kind of a go read the manga type of story. But from what I understand, it might be that they shift protagonists for a while. So they might not have wanted to... Like, that might have been a good place to end before they basically switched to their second protagonist.
What?
I don't know anything about who the second protagonist is. I just know there's a shift. So they basically go away from...
I'm just picturing Clarice.
Oh, yeah. Clarice was kind of like the worst, like, protagonist. People were like, when are we going to get back to Claire, please? When are we going to get back to Claire?
So I hope that isn't the case with Rinka. I loved her. I really thought that she was a strong character. I thought that she was a good leader, that she was smart, but she wasn't arrogant or overconfident and,
Or flawless.
Yeah.
And once again, she felt like a female character and not just like a male character who just had breasts, which I think is another thing that, like, sometimes happens to, like, not poorly written females. They're not poorly written females, but they're
women.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed. I mean, I think she's going to stick in my mind for the year.
I don't think it was the best show, but definitely Rinka made the show stand out more than it might have otherwise. Not that it would have been a bad show, but it definitely, just because she's such a unusual character in that respect, that it does make the show... Like, it does give, like, the show an additional, like, letter grade, or at least, like, half letter grade.
I really enjoyed it. I had fun watching it, but I agree with you, Al. It wasn't the best show of the season, but I do feel like not enough people checked it out.
Yeah, and it does have a slightly more Western appeal with its really, mutant... I mean, there's psychic powers, but they're essentially mutant abilities. Oh, if anybody knows, just because, this actually these things probably get listened to more than any of our other stuff. If anybody knows what Japanese or sci-fi series, like the standard psychic foot soldiers who have like the fishbowl things over their head, I've seen it in a few places. It's in the Jackie Striker. Bleach has a villain like that. It seems to be like this kind of tropey thing for psychics, and I'm sure it comes from something, but I don't know what it is. Other than that, yeah, definitely worth a look if you want a fun action series with a strong female protagonist.
And I hope the manga gets licensed. I think it would be a good fit. Mm-hmm. And well, I don't care about anybody else anyway, but I want to know what happens, although now I'm a little nervous now that you said new protagonist, Al. But otherwise, yeah, check out the anime.
Alright, see you guys next time.